So today I'm going to be talking about women's health, tackling pain and inflammation naturally after 40, so without medications. So, hi Anna, thanks for joining.
Hi.
So we're just going to get into it. A little bit about me. I am first and foremost a health coach certified by Duke, and in this setting, I'm acting as a health coach. I am also an osteopathic physician, board certified in internal medicine, rheumatology, and lifestyle medicine. But in this setting, I'm not acting as a physician. And so if you have questions or you want to know something specific about your health, it's best to go talk to your own doctor. This is more just like general health coaching advice. So, a little bit more about me. I am very interested in science and always have been since I was young. In high school, my favorite class was biology, and that just kind of naturally led me to pursue a career in medicine. And I decided to go into osteopathic medicine because I felt deeply that I agreed with the philosophy that the patient harnesses the ability to maintain their own health, and the body has a natural tendency to heal itself in the proper environment. I have always been passionate about women's health, and I have always been passionate and fascinated about the immune system. So, rheumatology seemed like a very good fit for me when I was choosing what specialty I wanted to go into, because oftentimes rheumatologic diseases and autoimmune diseases have a predilection for affecting young and middle-aged women. And so that's why I chose rheumatology because it combined working with young women and also working with the immune system. And as I went through my fellowship, watching young and middle-aged women struggle to navigate their lives as mothers, as wives, as daughters, as friends, as granddaughters, while also dealing with chronic pain and fatigue and their underlying disease holding them back, it just felt so unfair for them. And my heart just really went out to those patients, and I really just felt like if I could do anything to help these women and to help serve this population, that's what I want to do. That's what I feel like my true purpose is. And so I started practicing in rheumatology. And really, in my first year, I began to notice a pattern of young and middle-aged women who were feeling tired and having pain all of the time. And we would be giving them the medications that we have to offer them, but they weren't getting better. And they were actually getting more and more frustrated with me and with the system. And I felt their frustration and I shared it because I agreed that they were not getting better with the medications that we had to offer. And I recognize that our medical establishment has really stigmatized women with chronic pain as like an untreatable entity. And I think that that is not fair. And that is why I'm kind of here to revolutionize the way we talk and treat joint pain in middle-aged women. I think that we could and should be doing better. And I think that people just need really a lot more day by day instructions and hand holding and really like a coach to help guide them through the process of making lifestyle changes that will improve their disease. So, a lot of you on this call probably don't have, chronic joint pain and fatigue and inflammatory flare-ups, and you're here just to support me, and I appreciate that so much. But for the people that do maybe have some joint pain or feel like they're having some inflammatory flare-ups, you might be thinking, I've tried everything and it doesn't work. I'll never feel better. There's no rhyme or reason to my flare-ups, and I'm scared to try something yet again that's not going to work. And for those of you who don't have any issues with chronic joint pain and inflammatory flare-ups, I still think that this talk is going to be very relevant for you because there are so many pieces of information that will help you move towards health. I don't necessarily want to say prevent disease. I want to focus on moving you and your life towards health. And so, even if you're not struggling with these issues, you could still be moving towards a healthy life with some of the information that we're going to talk about today. So, common myth that people believe it's all in your head. And oftentimes, patients are meant to feel this way that their chronic pain and their fatigue and what they're going through is all in their head. and there's nothing real going on. And this can be very sad for them, very disheartening. It can make them feel lonely and like they're not part of normal society and they're not functioning normally like everybody else. Um, and this says, my pain is invisible, so is the pain you inflict on me when you don't believe me. And that's really like a statement that people can relate to, and that's really sad. They feel invisible, they feel unseen, they feel unheard, they feel like left out of society because they're not feeling like people are believing them when they're describing their symptoms. So I believe this is wrong. Chronic pain and specifically fibromyalgia, which is the patient population that I really want to focus on and I'm really interested in, is a very poorly understood condition and it's very difficult to diagnose and treat. The main characteristics of this condition are chronic generalized pain. So people usually get pain for over 3 months. Usually it's years by the time they get in to see a rheumatologist. Typically they have pain both above and below the waist, and it's associated with fatigue and cognitive dysfunction. And a lot of people would describe this as brain fog. So, did you know that people with elevated BMI or obesity are at increased risk of developing fibromyalgia? And in people who lose weight, those fibromyalgia symptoms do get better. The same goes for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And I think you can kind of say this as a blanket generalized statement for most conditions that cause chronic pain. In those associated with obesity, if you lose weight, the pain will get better. For every 1 pound of weight that you lose, that's like losing 4 pounds of pressure off of your knees. So that's a very good statistic for people that have chronic pain related to knee osteoarthritis. In fibromyalgia, there are only 3 FDA-approved medications. We only have 3 approved medications, and none of them really work that well. So we have Cymbalta, Lyrica, and Savella. You may have heard of these medications. Cymbalta is also called duloxetine. Lyrica is like a sister of gabapentin, and Savella is also called milnacipran. It affects 5 to 10 million Americans. So the prevalence in the United States is 7 to 8% in females and about 5% in males. So this is more than rheumatoid arthritis and lupus combined. And just like as a side note, the prevalence of osteoarthritis, which is the most common, joint disease that we see, is 7%. So actually fibromyalgia is more common than osteoarthritis. And the prevalence rises to 10 to 30% in people that have chronic autoimmune rheumatologic conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis or psoriatic arthritis or lupus or mixed connective tissue disease or ankylosing spondylitis. All of these kind of autoimmune rheumatologic diseases will predispose people to getting fibromyalgia at an increased rate of 30%. So it's much more common in this population. And we think it's probably because they have chronic underlying pain, and we'll talk later about how that pain becomes centralized. And the brain has difficulty interpreting that pain and then starts to interpret other signals as pain. And so it's basically like a vicious cycle of chronic pain. And this can also be associated with other symptoms like, we'll talk about this later, but migraine headaches or irritable bowel syndrome or chronic interstitial cystitis or dysmenorrhea, pain when you're getting your period, chronic pelvic pain, chronic abdominal pain, chronic shortness of breath without an etiology in the lungs, chronic chest pain without known cardiac etiology. So a lot of other kind of conditions go along with this same pain centralization problem. And there unfortunately is no cure. It's been difficult to develop mechanism-based therapies because of the limited understanding of the disease. And this slide is really coming from like 10 years ago in the textbooks that we were all trained in as far as where we're at with fibromyalgia and chronic pain syndrome. So there's been a lot more research in the last 10 years that I'm really excited to talk about now because I think it's very relevant and it will help tie in maybe all of the different diseases that can cause chronic pain and why this might be happening, and then what we can be doing to fix that problem. So in this presentation, what to expect, I want to give you an update on the recent research and how activation of microglial cells, which is my new favorite cell type, I can't stop talking about them, how they cause pain and fatigue, how chronic stress leads to microglial activation, how microglial activation can lead to other diseases like dementia, and how the microbiome influences our microglial cells. After that, we're going to talk about 15 ways to feel better now. So if you can't stay till the end, please send me an email and I can send you the recording, because that's really the crux of what we're going to be reviewing today. And this is what I'm hoping that each of you can take away with you today. So at that time, I would love for you to get your notebooks out. And for each thing that we go over of the 15 steps, I would like you to write down at least one actionable thing that you can do today, starting today, that that you think might resonate with you or might go along with your routine or might just be easier for you to start with. Then we'll review some proof of how this method works and then how to join the Hammett Wellness family if you're interested. So again, we're going to review that fibromyalgia and chronic pain have a very complex pathophysiology. So there's something to do with genetics. If you have a first-degree relative that has fibromyalgia, you're 11 times more likely to get fibromyalgia. We know that there's something going on with the neurochemicals, as we've seen that there's elevated levels of glutamate and substance P, which are neurotransmitters that help transmit pain signals. And there are reduced levels of serotonin and norepinephrine in the CSF. And then we also see elevated levels of fractalkine and interleukin 8, which are kind of inflammatory mediators in the CSF. So pain receptors in the brain become sensitized and overreact to painful and non-painful signals. And then we see neuroendocrine and autonomic nervous system abnormalities. So we'll see dysfunction of the hypopituitary axis. And we also see environmental stressors. So like physical or emotional events can trigger fibromyalgia. And this is an awesome diagram. If you took physiology, you might remember this, but our peripheral nociceptors, or the pain sensing fibers, are located in like our skin, our tissue, our muscles, and they send signals up through the dorsal root ganglion, which is where the kind of like the head of the cell lies. And then that signal decussates or crosses over the spinal tract up through the spinothalamic tract and then up to the brain in the pain processing area of the brain. And then in that area, there is kind of like a feedback loop between the nociception inhibiting neurons, or the pain inhibiting neurons, and the nociception facilitating neurons, or the pain activating neurons. And then that pain signal is supposed to get modulated and turned down in the brain. So in people that have chronic pain, there's a problem with turning that signal down. And we call that central sensitization to pain, because it's a problem that's going on centrally in the brain. And we'll talk about this more now that we have more information about microglial cells and how that relates to this pathway. So people get increased sensitization to pain, and this can be manifested as musculoskeletal pain and to other chronic pain conditions like we kind of talked about before: chronic migraine headache, chronic abdominal pain, or known as chronic abdominal dyspepsia, non-cardiac chest pain. People can get neuropathy, interstitial cystitis, irritable bowel syndrome, dysmenorrhea. All of these things are essentially chronic pain in various areas of the body. And so they are associated in people that have other chronic pain conditions and fibromyalgia. This picture is really cool because it shows us where the pain processing centers in the brain are. So the red area is pain only, and that's the thalamus. But then the yellow areas are where pain is processed in the brain and also emotions are processed in the brain. So in the amygdala, in the hippocampus, in the insular cortex, in the somatosensory cortex, in the prefrontal cortex, and in the anterior cingulate cortex, all of these areas have to do with pain processing, but they're also where we process our emotions. And this will tie in as we kind of go over how chronic stress is so important in the development of chronic pain. So we know that trauma is a trigger for chronic pain. People who have been in a car accident are more likely to get chronic pain and fibromyalgia. People who have been admitted to an intensive care unit and had a traumatic experience that way can get fibromyalgia more likely. In someone that's had Lyme's disease, they are more likely to end up with fibromyalgia because of the trauma that the disease caused. Someone who's had a loss of a loved one is more likely to get fibromyalgia. And then definitely in PTSD or a history of sexual abuse or anxiety, those people are also at increased risk of pain, chronic pain and fibromyalgia. So a lot of emotional tie-ins into chronic pain. So what medications are offered currently? Usually about 50% of people respond to the medications that we have available, and then they only respond by 25%. So it's really not great results as far as medications go. And that's why we're really looking for other ways to make these people better. So the first medication is amitriptyline. It's sedating. You have to take it at night. It can make you groggy in the morning. We have our dual reuptake inhibitors like Cymbalta and milnacipran. Those work, I say, the best out of all of these, but they tend to lose efficacy. So like after a year, people aren't responding as well as they did in the beginning when getting these medications. And then gabapentin and Lyrica are great, but again, cause drowsiness. Lyrica cause weight gain, which is like a big no-no for a lot of overweight women with fibromyalgia. Flexeril is a muscle relaxer that can work, but can also cause drowsiness. And same with tramadol. Tramadol is a mu opioid receptor agonist. So it's not an opiate, but it works on the same receptors. And again, can cause drowsiness. So essentially, all of these medications that we have can worsen brain fog, which is a big symptom of chronic pain and fibromyalgia. So other recommended treatments are exercise, acupuncture, cognitive behavioral therapy, Quell, which is a transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulator, kind of like a TENS unit, and then transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is kind of like electric shock therapy, but it's just magnetic pulses, so it's a lot less invasive. And all of these things have been shown to work kind of well. Like they help a little bit. So really, we don't have anything that's great. So now I'm going to review the more recent data that's been going on over the last 10 years. So the first thing is that in our training, all throughout medical school and all throughout my fellowship, we were told that fibromyalgia is not an autoimmune disease. It's not an autoimmune disease. There's no proof that it's an autoimmune disease. But everyone is always questioned. We know that there are certain immunology components that are more active in fibromyalgia. And why is that? So recently they did a study in the UK where they took immunoglobulins, so antibodies from humans' bodies, and they put them into mice sera. And then they watched the mice behave to certain stimuli. And they noted that the mice then began to exhibit symptoms of fibromyalgia. They had heightened pain sensitivity. They had heightened like thermal sensitivity, so to like heat and cold. And so then they were able to dissect these mice and see where these antibodies ended up in their bodies. And they ended up in satellite glial cells. So it was interesting to them because they thought the immunoglobulins would end up in the peripheral nervous system. So that was interesting. And that leads me to talk about my absolute favorite cells these days, the glial cells. So I literally cannot go a day without saying microglia. because I have been doing a lot of research on fibromyalgia and chronic pain recently. And they kind of come up as the cell that is involved in almost all diseases that have to do with chronic pain, fatigue, and memory loss, and even schizophrenia and autism, so many diseases. And so these microglial cells are very important. All the glial cells are important. They support the nervous system. So they support the nerve cells. So like Schwann cells and oligodendrocytes, they make the myelin sheath. And then microglial cells do a lot of different things, but they're essentially like the resident immune cell in the central nervous system, and they act as phagocytes. Phagocytes are like white blood cells that can eat pathogens and kind of like clean up other areas. So in this setting, microglial cells are supposed to clean up the neuron synapses. That's their main job. But they release cytokines, they talk to the nervous cells, and so they're in direct communication with them. And then here we also have ependymal cells and astrocytes, which help create the blood-brain barrier. But really focusing on those microglial cells as we go into the pathogenesis of fibromyalgia and other diseases that cause chronic pain. So this was a very interesting study where they looked at patients' brains who had fibromyalgia as compared to healthy controls on PET scans. And we know that people with fibromyalgia have increased glucose metabolism in the areas of the brain that process pain, the anterior cingulate cortex, the thalamus, the insula, indicating that they have a heightened pain processing activity. We knew that. So what this study did was they were actually able to label microglial cells by using a radioactive isotope carbon-11, which attaches to a transmembrane protein on the microglia. And in people with fibromyalgia, their PET scans lit up like a Christmas tree where microglial activation was going on as compared to healthy controls. What was even more interesting is that the people who lit up the most had the most subjective scores for fatigue. So essentially, the more fatigue they had, the more microglial activation was seen as compared to healthy controls. So I think that that's very interesting. So here's a little schemata of how this might work. And this kind of goes back to how we were talking about the centralization of pain and that process. This diagram is very similar, but now they add in how microglia and astrocytes affect the nociception. So before we were talking about how nociception inhibition and nociception modulation happen within the central nervous system to kind of tone down that pain response. Well, here they're saying that the astrocytes and the microglia sensitize nociceptive neurons. So there's more at play than just the neurons themselves. The microglia and the astrocytes are actually influencing these nerve cells to either wind up or wind down their pain response. So the microglia are really important in turning up or turning down the level of pain. So this brings me to tying in chronic emotional pain and how that can be converted to chronic physical pain. So there's actually a whole field of study called psychoneuroimmunology, which is a discipline that studies the relationship between immunology, the endocrine system, the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. And we know that neurotransmitters and hormones and neuropeptides can regulate the immune cells by communication via cytokines. So the central nervous system cells can communicate to our immune cells. And we know that chronic stress significantly affects the function of our immune cells. So this is all tied together. Our stress affects our immune system, affects our central nervous system, and vice versa. They're all interconnected. And later we'll get into not just the central nervous system and the immune system, but the gut and the central nervous system and the immune system. And that's now termed the gut-brain axis, and how all of these things are at play. So this is a little schemata of how stress, stress in the brain, all of these things going on in our brain, the to-do list, the time crunch that we're on, how this leads to increased corticosteroids, increased adrenaline production, activated immune cells in the spleen and the blood, activation of the adrenal gland, and how this then causes microglia to express certain receptors and also release certain cytokines like reactive oxygen species and interleukin 1 beta and CCL2. And this causes phagocytosis or eating of these nerve cells. So just again, hitting home that stress can cause dysregulation in our nervous system, specifically in our microglial cells. So this was another study that was done. Initially, the first study was done in Spain in 2015, and then the more recent study was done in 2024. So in 2015, they realized that they could induce fibromyalgia symptoms in mice by exposing them to chronic stress. So they put them in like 1.5 centimeters of water, and the mice had to float around for 5 days. And so they didn't sleep. And presumably they experienced chronic fatigue and chronic stress. And then they watched the mouse's behavior and realized that they also developed chronic pain, cognitive disturbances, anxiety, depression. So they described this as a good model for fibromyalgia in mice. So then they repeated this study with focus on the microglial cells after information had been coming out that microglial cells are likely pathogenic in fibromyalgia. And they found that when they were able to stress the mice into this fibromyalgia state, they saw increased microglial activity. Then they used a compound to suppress the microglia, and the mice went back to responding normally. So we now know, at least in mice models, that microglia are directly pathogenic to chronic pain in fibromyalgia. And this is all very new revelationary information. So this has also been studied in most other diseases that have to do with chronic pain and fatigue. So there's studies that have come out that in rheumatoid arthritis in patients that have chronic pain, their microglia are activated and dysfunctional. Same with complex regional pain syndrome, same with chronic back pain related to degenerative disc disease, same with osteoarthritis, same with myalgic encephalitis or chronic fatigue syndrome, same goes for lupus. And same goes for Alzheimer's disease. And what's most interesting to me is that the two genetic defects that lead to Alzheimer's disease that we know about involve mutations in genes that are primarily expressed in microglia. So all of these other diseases, it's not just fibromyalgia and it's not just chronic pain. It's a lot of chronic diseases that we are dealing with that have this microglial dysfunction as a pathologic factor. And that is so interesting and so cool to know, because now we know what the problem is and we can name it. And now we can start studying, well, how can we re-regulate our microglia? How can we re-regulate them? What can we do to help support them, support us? And there has been some information to come out about that we'll review as well. So I just want to bring home the point of chronic stress. So we talked about chronic stress and microglial dysregulation. Now I want to talk about specifically chronic stress and dementia. So in mouse models, chronic stress exacerbates neurodegeneration and increases amyloid beta accumulation and tau phosphorylation, which is known to cause dementia, these amyloid plaques. In PTSD, they are at increased risk for dementia. And we know that chronic stress induces long-lasting priming of microglia. So you can see how microglial dysfunction can lead to both fatigue, cognitive decline, and pain in fibromyalgia and all of these other, diseases that cause chronic pain. So what does the microbiome have to do with it? The gut microbiome modulates the central nervous system in both health and in neurodegeneration. The adult microbiota depend on genetics, environmental factors like diet, maternal environment, exposure to new microbiome. So like your microbiome is literally being set as you're born. So like the first person who touches you has a direct effect on your microbiome that could be lifelong lasting. And it's funny, I think that data about this was coming out when I was delivering my first baby because our OBGYN was so all about us doing skin to skin immediately. They just kept saying skin to skin, skin to skin, skin to skin. And so when my first baby came out, my husband was so obsessed with skin to skin that he had his shirt off in the delivery room ready to hold the baby because he had to make sure that she was going to get her skin to skin. And I just think that's so funny because it's actually directly related to the microbiome. And that's probably why they were pushing us to do that, to get that skin to skin so that our first baby, her microbiome was coming from us. Um, Other things that can influence your microbiome are like if you have a pet in the home, how many people you interact on a day-to-day basis, but also your diet. Your diet is a huge thing that can affect your microbiome. So the Mediterranean diet has been shown to be the best or most favorable for a symbiotic microbiome. And this is characterized by high intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, a moderate intake of fish and chicken, and maybe some alcohol, with low intake of red and processed meats and olive oil as the main fat source. And this has also been positively associated with cognitive decline in dementia. And actually, they did a study that showed that this slowed cognitive decline by 30% in people that followed a strict Mediterranean diet, which no other medication has been shown to do. So eating a healthy Mediterranean diet leads to increased levels of microbiome metabolites like short chain fatty acids, and those are important for cell signaling throughout the whole body, including in the central nervous system. So I call this side SAD. SAD stands for the Standard American Diet. So our westernized diet is characterized by a high content of proteins derived from processed meats mostly, saturated fats, refined grains, increased sugar and salt, alcohol, mostly corn-derived fructose syrup, and a decrease in fruits and vegetable consumption. And this has been associated with an increased risk of developing chronic inflammatory diseases. So we have an increased release of cortisol because of our diet. We have lower levels of insulin-like growth factor, which we know in mice, if they don't have insulin-like growth factor, they get neuronal loss. So it can disturb the neurons directly. It can have a negative effect on intestinal microbiota, leading to decreased total amount of bacteria, as well as a decrease in specific species that are known to be important. And then also, this diet can induce astrocytosis and TREM2 positive microglial activation. TREM2 is that genetic defect that we know about that increases your risk of dementia. So essentially, it is a very sad diet because it leads to chronic inflammation, it leads to dementia, it can lead to chronic pain, and lots of other diseases that we don't want. So diet, I think, is really, really key, and it's very simple to change. So how do microglia and the microbiome communicate? Well, they communicate in lots of different ways. One of them is directly through the vagus nerve, but also through microbiome metabolites. So microbiome create short chain fatty acids that pass through the gut barrier and then have a sequence of a chain of events of cytokines that can communicate with our immune system and then also our central nervous system. And then they can have a direct modulation on the peripheral nervous system. And they regulate intestinal permeability. And so that's how it can communicate with us overall. So one last thing about microbiome and our microglial cells. So they did a study looking at microglia from mice that were grown in a germ-free environment, meaning they had absolutely no microbiome. And these microglia were disturbed, they were altered, they were misshapen, they didn't move appropriately. And then in these same mice, they added back in a normal microbiome, and the microglial cells went back to functioning normally. It was almost instantaneous. So this is very important because we know that we can cause problems in our microglia by having dysbiosis in our microbiome. But if we can re-regulate our microglia go back to functioning normally very quickly. So I think that that's very promising. And then I just wanted to touch on microglial cells in sleep. So microglial immune response is controlled by the circadian rhythm, and several studies have shown that sleep deprivation modulates astrocytes and microglial phenotype and function. So it's important to sleep to maintain our microglia. So our microbiome is important for our microglia, stress is important for our microglia, sleep is important for our microglia. Last but not least, exercise is important for our microglia. So in mice that exercise on a treadmill for 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks, this leads to reduced expression of toll-like receptor pathways, which induce inflammation. And this could be the mechanism for the anti-inflammatory effects of exercise. They also found that there was increased levels of interleukin-10, which is an anti-inflammatory cytokine. So what now? In the next 15 slides, I want to give you 15 very simple ways to decrease your pain, improve your energy, and reduce inflammatory flare-ups and take back control of your life. And these are all things that you could literally start doing today, but the list might be too exhaustive to start all today. So what I'm hoping is you can get a notepad out, and for each slide, just write down one thing that resonates with you or one thing that you feel like could fit in your schedule easily so that we can get started on this process of moving towards health now. So the first thing is, and I know many of you don't have chronic pain, but when you do get pain, all of us will get intermittent back pain or intermittent tendon flare-up or whatever it may be. You really want to unassociate the fear-pain cycle. So if you are living in a state of fear from pain, it's a constant negative cycle of pain and fear and pain and fear. And this often happens subconsciously, where you don't even know that you're afraid of having the pain. And when you get the pain, you go into this fear kind of flight or fight response, which then heightens the pain signal. So with this, you can retrain your brain to have no fear around your pain. And the best way to do this is to just sit with your pain. Have a beginner's mind about your pain and be curious about it. Be open to how it feels. Describe it to other people. Write it down. Characterize it. Follow it. Where does it go? Where does it stay? How long does it stay? What does it feel like? All of these things about just being open to it happening can help decrease the pain fear cycle. So action steps that I would want you to do would be to get your journal out and describe it when it's happening. And then tell yourself, this is not scary and this will get better. This process can take years to become successful at, but when you do it, it will make huge results in chronic pain if you have chronic pain. So next thing is an anti-inflammatory diet. And this is really what my program is based off of, is resetting the microbiome, resetting the metabolism, resetting the immune system, resetting the nervous system dysregulation in order to reset pain, fatigue, bloating, and all of the negative things that none of us want. So 70% of our immune system lies within our gut. So that's just crazy. Our microbiome directly influences our immune system, and what we eat directly influences our microbiome. So it's just such an easy, simple thing to do. And it's literally never too late because we can change our microbiome within a period of 6 days. So anyone can do this. And I would say if you are just starting with this, the first step would be to eliminate processed foods. So processed foods have been shown to disrupt the mucosal barrier that goes in between our microbiome and our gut lining. And it's very important to maintain that mucosal barrier because when things get through that mucosal barrier, when that mucosal barrier becomes weakened, the microbiome comes a little bit too close to our gastrointestinal lining, and that can cause inflammation. So we want to keep that layer intact. And the way to do this is by eating a whole food plant-based diet. And so processed foods disrupt that mucosal barrier and cause increased risk for metabolic syndrome. A plant-based diet will help maintain that mucosal barrier with production of short-chain fatty acids, with all of the positive downstream effects that go to our central nervous system and our immune system. Um, with this, it is very hard to change habits, especially in people who have been eating a certain way for years and years and years. That's why I think that in order to go through an overhaul of your diet, it is essential to have a health coach. You need someone guiding you along, telling you what to do, asking you how each step of the way made you feel, what your goals are. It's just so important to be working alongside a coach when you want to do a dietary overhaul. Um, so the first step that I would say would be to eliminate processed foods. If you can do that successfully, processed foods are essentially anything that comes in a bag or a package. And I include bread, rice, and pasta in that section. So I guess you really have to look at things and read labels. They may be sold to you as organic or healthy, but if they come in a package, I would presume that that is a processed food. Um, the next step would be try to cut out dairy, gluten, soy, and nightshades one at a time to see if your system is sensitive to these. I typically recommend doing a full overhaul for 6 weeks and cutting out all of these things, and then adding one thing in back at a time and giving yourself 3 to 5 days to experiment with that food group again to see how you feel once your body has detoxified and cleansed off of everything else. But everyone kind of does the elimination diet differently. And then in general, fill your plate with the nutrients that your body needs, which are plants, fruits, and vegetables. So high fiber diet. There was a study that just came out about high fermented foods. So like kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir, all of these things are really good and support our microbiome. But really focusing on a high fiber diet, whole food, plant-based diet. You can eat meat, you can eat chicken, you can eat fish, but the most important and number one thing should be that you're eating more fruits and vegetables. So number 3 is modulate your neurotransmitters. So a lot of things that are important in fibromyalgia and chronic pain are dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, and oxytocin. So a couple of action steps are swap coffee for green tea because green tea increases serotonin and contains mood boosting things like L-theanine that can help with anxiety but don't necessarily cause drowsiness. Get outside, just being in the sun can increase your dopamine levels. Getting touched, so getting a massage, like paying for a massage, having your partner massage you, hugging your dog even counts. Like physical touch increases oxytocin. Develop a sleep routine that establishes a good circadian rhythm. This has been like crucial for me this year, is really trying to watch my circadian rhythm and waking up with the sun and going to bed when the sun goes down. I feel like that has been instrumental in me being able to sleep without having to take sleeping medications. Watching a funny movie, so laughing increases oxytocin. Supporting your microbiome can increase serotonin. They say like 70% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So things that you can do to support your microbiome would be like pre and probiotics, eating high fermented foods, and then foods in high fiber, like we talked about. Call a loved one. So connection and meaningful conversations boost oxytocin. This is something that you can do every day. It's a quick thing that you can do. Just connect with someone that you love and make that a daily priority. Get aerobic exercise. This increases oxytocin and endorphins. Eat foods that increase serotonin and melatonin. So like salmon, chicken, eggs, spinach, seeds, mushrooms, nuts all have been shown to promote serotonin and melatonin. So those foods are good. And then have sex. That increases oxytocin and lowers cortisol and probably makes your partner happy. Developing a sleep routine is key. So if you are not sleeping well, you will not feel better. It's a direct correlation. You have to be sleeping well in order to feel better. Um, I think that the easiest thing, like the easiest action step on this that can make such a huge impact is leaving your phone outside of the room before you go to bed. If you're bringing your phone in your room when you're going to bed and you're scrolling or you're seeing that blue light is telling your brain that it is not time to go to sleep. So have you ever like gotten into bed and you're feeling exhausted and then you get your phone out and you start scrolling and all of a sudden it's an hour later and you're like not tired anymore? And you're like, what the heck? I was exhausted. I should have gone to bed an hour ago. But it's because you're looking at that blue light. You need that out of your room. So I think your room should be a completely sacred space for sleep. What we did is we got like blue light blocking red bulbs in our bedside lamps. And so when the sun goes down, I turn those on. And anytime I walk into my room in the evening, it reminds me that this is my sleep zone and my sleep time is coming up. Um, but yeah, I think the easiest thing to do would be to just plug your phone in outside the room. So you just don't even bring your phone into your room if you're able to do that. Um, don't watch TV in your room. Another thing is taping your mouth. So breathing through your nose is better for you. It improves sleep. It improves relaxation. It's better for our microbiome because we're humidifying our air and breathing through like our nasal cilia. If you're looking for a good book to read, there's a book called Breath. I'm forgetting the author right now, but it's a new one that just came out, and it's all about how we should be breathing through our noses, and most of us are mouth breathers now, and it's not good for our sinuses. It's not good for asthma. It's not good for snoring. It's not good for obstructive sleep apnea. And so we really need to practice breathing through our nose in order to open up those passages and use them again. Um, Go to bed and wake up at the same time every single day. That's really important. Try and stick to a schedule. Watch the sunrise and watch the sunset if you can. Maybe plan out your kids' sports activities or their evening activities around trying to catch the sunset. Keep your bedroom cool at night. So typically recommended is about 69 degrees. And I've also found that super helpful this year. I used to think that I liked to be warm at night, but I have noticed now that I have an Oura ring tracking my sleep that if I sleep in a warmer temperature at night, I don't sleep as well. So even though I'm cold going to bed, I get a better night's sleep. And last but not least is track your sleep. So I really recommend the Oura Ring. I love it. I wear it every day. I wear it all the time. It really helps me keep on track with my sleep. It's almost like an accountability partner for like getting to bed on time. And not only that, it gives you great information about what foods or maybe what drinks inhibit your sleep. This has been another key for me really stopping drinking alcohol this year because I've noticed that even with like one glass of wine, my heart rate drops at its lowest much later in the night, and so my sleep is disturbed in that way. And when I don't drink, I that doesn't happen, and I wake up feeling very ready. They give you a readiness score, and so I'm like a huge proponent of having an Oura ring to track your sleep. So number five is stress management. So for me, and everyone's different, being outside in nature is a huge way to de-stress. Guided meditations, I also like, but I find them harder to make myself do. Breath work, I think, is something that's very easy that we can all be incorporating that we never use. It's just like such an easy thing. It takes such a small amount of time. And we can all can be doing it. So like um with breath work, an action step would be like every hour setting an alarm on your phone and doing boxed breathing. So boxed breathing is where you breathe in for 6 seconds, out for 6 seconds, in for 6 seconds, out for 6 seconds. So, or cyclic sigh is really good too. You just take a deep breath in through your nose, inhale as much as you can, and then you take one last sip of air through your nose and then exhale through your nose. So And if you can do one of those breathing exercises every hour throughout your day, I think that that can definitely help with stress management. And then doing a guided meditation, like setting that as part of your schedule as your morning routine, is something else you can do. So nature is very important. We have to get out in nature every single day. We are creatures that we're supposed to be out in nature. It encourages mindfulness and presence. There are healing powers outside in the ocean, believe it or not. The ocean releases like electrical charge and magnesium, which can calm us. And there are healing powers even in plants and trees. So there are phytochemicals, which are essentially like nature's essential oils. And the plants release these to help fight off pathogens and boost their own immune system, but it actually helps with the human's immune system as well. So just being outside and breathing the phytochemicals that the plants are releasing can be healing for your own body. So action steps with this would be plan a walk with a friend or coworker, and or just have this time be like precious solitude for yourself to be outside and connect with nature. I know a lot of you live in California. I think it looks like all of you live in California. So you have beaches available to you, parks, maybe lakes, and maybe even mountains if you're lucky. So get out there, get in nature, and make sure that you plan it and make sure that that's important in your day. The next thing is grounding. So the earth has a natural negative electrical charge, and when you make direct contact with it, your body can absorb these electrons. And so this has actually been shown in scientific papers to reduce inflammation and actually improve wound healing, specifically in like people who have diabetic foot wounds. So just putting your foot on the ground and absorbing electrons from the earth is literally healing, and it takes 2 seconds, and it's good for you. So the simplest thing you can do is put your bare feet on the earth every single day. You can also get grounding shoes or a grounding mat. I just got a grounding mat for my workplace because I can't put my feet in the ground there, but I can at least put my feet on my mat. And I haven't noticed any healing properties yet, but it's just something else that we can be doing to add to our daily routine that may be beneficial. Number 8 is gentle movement. So you have to incorporate movement of your body every single day. We say motion is the lotion. If you don't use it, you will lose it. You have to move your body. But I don't want you to push through pain. So you have to listen to your body as well. The goal would be to get to 30 minutes of aerobic exercise a day. So action steps for this is, first things first, decide when you're going to do it, and then schedule it in your day so that it's in your calendar and it's a non-negotiable, has to be done. And then make a graded exercise plan on how to get to 30 minutes a day. So if you're starting from scratch, you don't just want to go out and run a marathon. You want to make a plan of start with 3 minutes a day, start with 3 minutes of aerobic exercise every single day. And the most important thing is that you're keeping it in your schedule every single day for 3 minutes. And then after 2 weeks, when you're feeling great on doing 3 minutes a day, you go up to 5 minutes a day every single day for 2 weeks. And then when you're feeling great doing 5 minutes a day every single day, you go up to 7 minutes a day. And so you just do short incremental increases in order to get to your goal of 30 minutes. And that's okay if it takes you 6 months to get there. The most important thing is that you stick with it and you're doing it every single day. Next step is educate yourself. So I think that this is very important because I think that, I can listen to other people talk and listen to PowerPoints, but until I actually start reading and doing the research myself and putting it together, that's when it really makes sense for me. So, and I'm sure a lot of you guys feel that way too. So, I like Medscape. I read Medscape articles all the time. FibroGuide is a good website for people with fibromyalgia specifically. The Arthritis Foundation has great resources on osteoarthritis and chronic pain, and then also the US Pain Foundation. So action steps for this would be to pick a place that puts out material that you enjoy reading. Maybe you think it's funny or just like a light read, and sign up for their newsletter. You can also follow scientific experts on Instagram. I love doing that because that's like direct information from the scientists themselves. And then I also subscribe to podcasts that review scientific data. I really like Peter Attia. I really like Andrew Huberman. And recently I started listening to Mark Hyman, and I like all three of them because they take the research straight to the scientist that was doing the study, and then they interpret it for you, which is really nice because it's coming direct from the horse's mouth of the person who did the study. Next is community. So community is very important. Community helps structure our lives. So we are social people. We're social creatures. We were meant to be in a community, and this is where we feel most whole. And so we need to nurture this. And it can help with emotional support. It can help with shared experiences and encouragement, with education and providing other resources and encouragement and advocacy, access to resources, and then reduced feelings of isolation. So make it a point to talk to someone you care about or love each day. I think that that's really key because that's something we can easily do in 10 minutes while we're cooking dinner or we're on a commute. You can call your mom, you can call your best friend, you can call your cousin, whoever you feel like you're most close with, someone that supports you, that you feel connected to. That's something that you should really be making time for every single day. You can get a health coach who will support you in your goals, and you can join a support group, or you can start one even if there isn't one in your community that you're attracted to. Number 11 is purpose. So without purpose, we're not connected to our actions. You know, with a life without purpose is a life not lived. So purpose can help with improved physical health. It can help with longevity. People who have like a drive and a purpose tend to live longer. It improves life satisfaction and then also relationships and community because it binds you. So action steps for getting a purpose is get a purpose journal that gives you prompts. So there are literal purpose journals, and they'll give you little prompts on kind of how to get closer to like what you really want to do, who do you really want to help, who do you really want to be, where do you want to be, what's your life purpose. And then also I read a book called Ikigai, which is all about, you know, trying to find your life's purpose. And in Japanese, Ikigai means like life's purpose or finding your life's purpose. And so the book kind of helps generate ideas as to helping you create and find your life's purpose. And then number 12 is something that I think is really cool, but might sound a little woo-woo. They're called segment intentions. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Esther Hicks. She is a woman who believes that she channels Abraham and she gets messages from him, and it can be definitely a little woo-woo, but she is a proponent of something called segment intention, which I fully support and do and think that it works. So there is actually a neuroscience behind visualization and thinking about your goals and visualizing them. And the reason is because the brain is neuroplastic. So the brain is capable of reorganizing itself and forming new neural connections throughout life. So like, you know, when you're learning a new skill later in life, it's hard at first and you have to struggle through it. But then as you keep doing it over and over and over, it becomes muscle memory. And then you don't even have to think about it anymore. And that's neuroplasticity. So with segment intentions, it really focuses on visualization. So you visualize an outcome that activates similar brain regions as when you actually experience that outcome. And so the neuroplasticity at play kind of reinforces that if you're thinking about something happening over and over, your brain is making those connections. And so when you start to get closer to that goal, that connection is already there and can happen much easier. So that's kind of where this visualization and intention comes in. It also helps with motivation. So setting clear intentions through manifestation practices improves goal clarity, and then the brain responds to clear goals by activating motivation networks. So thinking about your goals, visualizing your goals, writing them down reinforces the neuroplasticity and the neurons forming in that way so that this can happen for you. And that's the neuroscience behind visualization. So the action steps of segment intention are to take 10 minutes in the morning to visualize each segment of your day and imagine that all of these segments went exactly as you intended or planned. What would these segments look like? So, what would it look like when you first woke up in the morning and your day was going exactly as planned? Where would you sit? What cup would you use? What would be in that cup? How would that cup taste? What would you do next? Would you read a book? Would you get ready for work? What would driving to work look like? What would the workday look like? What would eating lunch look like? What would it feel like? What would it smell like? What would your interactions with others look like? What would it look like when you drove home from work? What would it look like when you served your family dinner? How would that feel? What would it look like when you got into bed for the first time? How would all of those things feel? And write that all down. And that can literally change your whole day because you're making these neural connections towards the things that you want to happen that day. And maybe things will go your way more so if you do this. Maybe not, but you'll probably be more readily okay with it as well after doing this activity. And I put in the link here for YouTube if you want to check out. There's like a video on how this works and how you can implement it in your own life. Number 13 is build resilience. So, resilience is linked to better health outcomes. It helps people cope with adversity. It helps improve mental health, enhance problem solving skills, increase adaptability, and also strengthen relationships. And things to do to help build resilience, most simply, is practice self-care, but also set realistic goals, try and cultivate a positive mindset, embrace change, and cultivate problem-solving skills. So they say, growth mindset is like a very highly used term now in the educational system, but like really having a growth mindset helps you build resilience because you're not focused on the outcome, you're focused on the process. Um, and this helps limit stressors and helps develop better coping skills. So, number 14, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll try and make this quick, but shift to a parasympathetic state. So, and this was really important. You need to reduce your stress. You need to get your cortisol levels down. You need to move out of this chronic stress state because, as we said, chronic stress activates your microglia. Chronic stress can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's disease and all of these other neurodegenerative diseases that we don't want. So, you need to stay in a parasympathetic state as much as possible. In the parasympathetic state, you get better sleep quality, lower heart rate, lower blood pressure, enhanced digestion, stress reduction, enhanced focus and mental clarity. Your hormones are balanced and you're socially connected. So, this is really the state that you want to focus on and that you want to be in. So, how do you get there? Breathing is one thing. So deep breathing, again, set your alarm once an hour and try and do either the box breathing or the sigh breath. You can also meditate, do a morning or a nighttime meditation routine. Yoga is helpful for shifting into a parasympathetic state. Getting out in nature, sauna or jacuzzi is helpful for vasodilation and getting into a parasympathetic state. Massage, put it in the calendar, either have your partner do it or set up an appointment, but that's really helpful for shifting into a parasympathetic state. And then gratitude journal for sure is last but not least, and we'll talk about that in the last slide. I think that this is the second most important thing that I would add like today. So number one was just leave your phone outside of your room. Don't bring your phone in your room. Number two, I think this is the most simple thing that you can do that can really, really change your life. Have a gratitude journal at your bedside and journal the things that you appreciate and you are happy about in your life. It can seriously put you into a parasympathetic state. It can make you sleepy and help you go to bed, and you'll go to bed in a good mood because it's promoting positive emotions. It boosts resilience. It increases satisfaction. It promotes mindfulness because you have to think about actually right now what's going on that's making me happy. And it's just like the simplest thing to do that can really make a huge impact. So I wanted to share my golden schedule and how like I incorporate all of these things into my life. So I don't know if you can see this, but if I had my perfect schedule every day, which it obviously doesn't go like this every single day, but I really try and focus on having it go this way every single day. At 5:30, I wake up, I have coffee, and I do breath work with meditation. So I bang those two things out at the same time, and that's kind of getting my stress down right when I wake up. Um, so I'll do like a deep breathing meditation with a guided meditation on Insight Timer at the same time. Then 15 minutes later, I start my segment intentions and I journal and I review my goals. So I review my goals from the past to see kind of how far I've come. And then I write about my goals for the future and what those would look like if everything went perfectly. And then I write about how my day, what it would look like if it went perfectly. And then at 6 a.m., when the sun's coming up, I try and get outside and watch the sunrise. And I go outside with my bare feet and I put my feet in the grass. So that's kind of checking off the boxes of nature, grounding, and getting my circadian rhythm in check. At 6:15, I go back inside and I start reading. I usually have my second cup of coffee then. And I do some personal development. So I read a book or I read an article or a scientific journal that I find stimulating. And I feel that that kind of checks my boxes of self-care, education, and stress mitigation. Then from 7 to 8:30, I'm in full kid time, which is amazing, just getting them off to school. Then I go to work and I work. I know everyone has different schedules. I work 7 hours straight and I don't take a lunch break, just so I can get home in time to do everything else that I need to do. Um, so at 4 p.m., I try and go to yoga. I like hot yoga. It vasodilates me. I feel like it puts me in this parasympathetic state for when I come back home after work. It kind of separates my work and my family life. So when I come back home, I'm in a completely relaxed state and happy to be home. At 5 p.m., I have some time with my family. We reconnect about our day, and that kind of satisfies my community and my connection. Then we make dinner, and that's all about my microbiome and what I'm going to feed my microbiome that evening. And I also prep for the next day. So I bring my lunch with me the next day, and I have everything packed the night before, and I do that during dinner. Focusing, I really try and think about what my microbiome want when I'm making dinner and also for the next day. And then I eat dinner with my kids for about an hour, and I try and be very connected and present during that time. And that really gives me a sense of purpose. And then we do dinner cleanup and tub time and books, which again, I feel connected and purposeful with. And then at 9 p.m., I'm in bed and I do my gratitude journal for 10 minutes. And then I try and be asleep by 9:10. And so I usually tell people that if you're in bed for 8 hours, you're probably sleeping for 7.5, and we should be aiming for 8 hours of sleep a night. So you should be in bed. You should try and be in bed for 8.5 hours. Um, so yeah, that's my schedule, and I'm sure everyone else has different schedules. And um, as we go, if you guys decide to join the program, we will work with your schedule and see how we can fit in all of these things that are very important to regulate your nervous system and your microglia into your life schedule. Because I know everyone's busy. So, excuse me, a little bit about my program, Hammett Wellness Reset Program. We started this program this year, again, as a kind of stemming from the fact that I was feeling like my patients were unsatisfied with the care they were giving, and I was feeling frustrated with the care that was being given to them, and really wanted to like create this new way of approaching health in women with chronic joint pain and fatigue, not using medications. So this program is a 12-week long program. The start date is January 6th, but I also have a cohort starting on February 3rd because there have been people that want to join that can't make it in January for prior obligations. So if January doesn't sound like a good fit for you, we can potentially squeeze you in February. So the time commitment is about 60 to 90 minutes a day. That's including food prep. As you can see, like on my golden schedule, a lot of these things that you should be doing, you can knock out like three at a time, you know, like your purpose and your family time and your sense of connection, like that's all together in a 30-minute time frame. So it doesn't take much time to do all of these things that are required of you in the program. The biggest thing is the food prep, but most people are already food prepping anyways. So the first 6 weeks of the program is really focused on an anti-inflammatory elimination diet. So we essentially eliminate all processed foods, no gluten, no soy, no dairy. Red meat is allowed, but we like to see, you know, potentially some people don't agree with red meat as well. And so that we'll have to figure that out person by person. Um, and that's the first 6 weeks. And in the first 6 weeks, we're really focused on releasing inflammation and releasing toxins. And that's really the stage where you'll also release a lot of weight. And then the next 4 weeks, we focus on adding things back in little by little and reintroducing foods essentially to see how your body responds. And then also focusing on maintaining the results that we achieved in the first 6 weeks. And then the last 2 weeks are you're reassimilated into real life, and we're just kind of watching you and coaching you along the way on the choices that you're going to be making really for the rest of your life. So included in the program is a recipe book or meal plan that's essentially your guide. So it's like your go-to guide. It'll tell you what to do day by day. There is a full meal plan and recipe book in this guide, but a lot of people use it more as a guide and not like as a direct recipe book. Although the girl that I'll talk about soon, she followed it to a T and she had the most success with weight loss. So I'm sure the more you follow the recipe book, the more success you'll have. So it comes with that, and then it also comes with organic reishi mushroom coffee, and we do that as a breakfast substitute because we do intermittent fasting. So typically we eat between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., but that can be adjusted based on your family schedule. But we do like to keep it where you are fasting for 16 hours and eating for 8 hours, and you're not eating within 3 hours of going to bed. So as long as those criteria are being met, then we can kind of shift those hours around. The program comes with an Oura ring to track sleep, and then we also give you a food scale and a smart scale that follows your body fat that will connect to your smartphone. And then, of course, you are given a gratitude journal because that's a huge part of the program. And then you'll be given daily prompts through our app system that we use called Practice Better. And that's also where you will record your food and where we will have our weekly Zoom coaching meetings that will be done one-on-one with me. And then you'll be part of a bigger support group through the Facebook group. And once you complete the group, or the program, then you'll go through to the Hammett Wellness alumni program. So my guarantee for this program is that you will have less propensity towards inflammatory flare-ups and nervous system dysregulation. You will be sleeping better, have more mental clarity, less bloating, and weight loss is an added perk if desired. You do not have to lose weight on this program. We can figure out a way for you not to lose weight, but it's very natural to lose weight if you're following the program.